guys, welcome to your ninth video, and in this video I'm going to show you guys how to connect from the PHP to the SQL, for the SQL to return back to the PHP, for the PHP to return back to the JavaScript. And we're almost done with our validation. I mean, this is the most important part of the video concerning validation of credentials. Okay, so after this video you'll understand fully how to create any validation form for any website you create in the future, including this website. So this is where we were. Now we've gotten the email and the password. What do we do with it? Okay, so we are supposed to check in our database, okay, in our table users, whether actually there is a user like that called Penkra, whatever I type in the whatever the user types in the email and password field. Okay, so before we can continue, we have to add some things to our database, okay, because now it's empty. All right, so let me insert some of the things into the database. So how do I insert? Okay, so in creating a table, I wrote a query to create a table, and I explained to you what the query does and how it's used. In inserting values into the table, you also write a query. And the query is very simple. You just write insert into, okay? And after you write insert into, and mind you, your queries are supposed to run on a table. If you run the PHP admin for the first time again, if you close it and you open it again, you have to click on the database before you click on the SQL, before you start writing your query. Otherwise, it's going to show you an error that no database is selected. All right. Okay, so let's continue. So we're going to insert into a users table. So insert into users, and you bring a bracket. Okay, so in this bracket, you're going to provide the columns that you want to insert into. So you want to insert into email. So the columns are on the right. If you want to find the email, then you bring a comma, comma first name, comma other name, comma last name, type. All right. So we are inserting into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 things. And what are we inserting? Values. All right. So we are inserting 6 things: email, password, first name, other name, last name, and type. All right. So my email is penkra.emmanuel@gmail.com. My password is maybe okay, and maybe my first name is Emmanuel, and I don't have any other name. My last name is Atta. And the type in the table creation, I showed you that the type will only contain one letter to specify whether I'm a student or I'm a teacher. So assuming I am a student, so S for the type. All right, then you click on go to insert it into the users table. So when you click on users, now you find that the ID, you see in the code you wrote that the ID should auto increment. So the ID always increases anytime we add. So we don't need to add it into the ID column because it will always increase. We don't need to add anything into it. And because we wrote not now for all the columns, the other name doesn't have any null word there, as I explained to you before. Okay, so we have something in our database. Now, how do we check in the database to see whether our credentials are correct? So we need a connection. Okay, so in PHP to connect to MySQL is very simple, but then we can write the connection inside the validate file, PHP file directly. But then because we're going to use the connection file in a lot of other parts of our website, let's write it in a separate file so that we don't need to always copy and paste. So click on Control N or Command N for a new file, and we're going to create our connection. It's also in PHP. All right, so click on save and save it inside your PHP folder. All right, find PHP, and the name of the file is going to be connection or config.php. all right, config.php. So you save it there. So this is config.php, and we're going to write our code to connect to this MySQL through via PHP my admin. Okay, so how do we do that? We need to bring a variable called connection. Okay, let's name it con up for simplicity. All right, and this requires a whole new like 1 hour to explain how the connection works and everything about it. But then let me explain it in the shortest possible time as I can. There are like basically two types of connections to MySQL. Okay, you can use something we call MySQLi or MySQL. The MySQLi just stands for improved, MySQL improved connection. Okay, which is very straightforward. And you can also use something called PDO, PHP data objects. When I started programming, I was using MySQLi, but then I read some articles on PDO, and I found PDO easier to use. Okay, and I found PDO to be faster in terms of prepared statements. I'm going to explain what prepared statements are afterwards. So PDO is what we're going to use for this tutorial, and it's very short. That is one of the reasons why I also like PDO. You don't write a lot of things. So when you bring the variable con, you see in PHP all our variables begin with a dollar sign, and you bring any name you want to bring. Just like this, variable begins with dollar sign, bring any name you want to bring. So PHP con is equal to new PDO. All right. So this is where I call the PDO, and we're gonna specify the things which will make the connection work. Okay, so every connection, whether MySQLi or PDO, needs four things. It needs the host. Okay, it needs the database name. It needs the username. It needs the password. Okay, so what is our host? If you want to find the host, just look at this thing. The first word is localhost. So localhost is our host for this server. So the host is localhost. So you just first of all you have to bring a string, a quotation mark. Then type MySQL. Then you bring a colon. Then type host. Then you bring an equal to. So the host is localhost. Then you bring a comma. Then you need a database name. What is the name of our database? This is the database name, test base. So database name, you can make a DB name for short. It's called to test base. All right, and you come outside of the string, okay, and you bring a comma. All right, then what is our username and what is our password? Now, before we can find this, let's go to the AMPPS homepage, and you go to my SQL password. All right. So here you find the username as root. So this is my SQL's username. So our username is root. So how do we write that? You just write root into this string and you bring it outside. You write your password here. So what is our password? We didn't specify any password in the beginning of our video, so automatically it would have been empty. But then it says note default root password is MySQL. So that means our password is MySQL. All right. So this is how to call the database connection in just one line. But then there is another problem. Whenever you are driving or whenever you're riding a motorcycle, you always put on a helmet. You don't put on a helmet because you know you're gonna fall down. You put on a helmet because anytime that you fall down, you are safe. Whenever you're driving, put on your seatbelt for the same reason. So in connection from PHP to the MySQL, we need to try and catch it. So try and catch just refers to like safety, so that in case something goes wrong in the connection, all right, in case something goes wrong in the connection, the code doesn't go well and display all sorts of secret information and errors which hackers can use to hack us. Okay, so you have to catch it. Otherwise, and anytime there is, I'm not saying there will be a fault in the connection. No, I'm just saying that anytime there is a connection problem and you don't try catch it, it will display all sort of things, including information which people can use to hack your website. So how do you try catch it? Before you begin your connection, you bring try, then you bring your curly braces, enter. All right, so let's paste this inside the try block. All right, then you catch. So you catch and you bring this and you bring this. So let me give you other classical examples of where try catch is used. For example, if you have an app and you are using it, then most of the times is this app stopped working and all that. The reasons could be that the app did something dangerous and they didn't catch it. So once that dangerous thing failed, okay, the app shut down automatically. Okay, so in the catch, you're gonna bring a class called PDO exception. Then the variable for this exception is maybe E. Okay, so what E will do is nothing. So E contains the errors from the connection, but then we don't display error. We just want to display. Let me use echo before I use that. So we want to tell the person that error connecting to the database. So once the developer sees this, you know that, oh dang, there's something wrong with the connection. All right, but then echo just returns this thing. But there's another thing called die. Okay, echo doesn't stop the page from running. Die stops the page from running. Okay, so die will stop every other part of the website from running in order to avoid any disgrace. Okay, so it just tells the user that error connecting to the database. That is it, and it stops from running. It stops any other part of the page from running. Okay, so now we've done this connection. There is one more line we need before this, which is the attributes. You type con, then you bring a dash, and you bring this, and you bring set attribute. Okay, then the attribute is a PDO attribute. Then you need these things. Okay, just type the same thing. All right. So this will prevent the PDO from displaying the default errors. Okay, and it will also control the errors behavior. So this is what this line will do. So now we've created our database connection page. Let us check whether it is actually connected. So it will do this thing. Okay, so if there is an error with our connection, it will display this error to us, error connecting to the database. How do you run our file? Just type in localhost invent school, then /php/config.php. It says error connecting to the database. That means there is something which went wrong in our database connection. All right, so when you see such an error, you have to check what's the mistakes could be. Okay, so MySQL host localhost correct. Oh yeah, this shouldn't be a comma, it should be a semicolon. Okay, so now let's see what it tells us now. Good, it didn't tell us anything. That means our database connection was successful. If we didn't catch this and display this, okay, first of all, if we didn't catch this, it was going to show us a whole list of wrong things and a whole list of things that we don't want to see. And if we didn't also display this, I'll never know that there is an error with what I wrote. Okay, so now you come back to the validate.php file and you bring the file that we wrote, which is config.php, by one line called require. Okay, require config.php. Okay, you can also use require once. So you can use require or require once, but then require once prevents another calling of the same file. Okay, that means that after you bring this require once of the same file won't work. So I always like using require once. So require once config.php. Okay, so we've gotten our email and password, and we've gotten our connection. So everything is working in our validate. Now the next thing is to use the connection to check inside the database whether there is actually something there, such as my email and the password, or the user's email and password. So that will be video 10, and that will be the last video for our validation.